Hey, all you Minties, this is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition. Right, of course, you probably know that by now. But anyway, today I'm back for part 2 of my top 20 most favorite comic book writers of all time. This is going to be a countdown, so today we're going to be focused from 10 all the way to 1. And there will be an honorable mentions list, as well as this list originally started as 25 of my favorite top writers. And what I'll do is I'll put number 21 all the way to numbers 25 in there right before I talk about my number 1 favorite comic book writers, if that makes sense. So, please stay tuned. And welcome back, everybody. Now, normally I like to give a shout out to all the people that have suggested these episodes. So, last time I forgot to mention a name, and that was Johnny. So, thank you so much, Johnny. I forgot about that. I put my wife in charge of collecting those names. So, it's on me. I'm not even going to lie. It's on me. So, before I get started, again, I want to remind everybody that this is just my list. This is my top 10 favorite comic book writers. If you have not seen part 1, which has the list of 20 through 11, I'll put the link above or something. Yeah, sure, to make it easier for you to find. But this is it. This was a very difficult list for me to put together. I take it to heart. I take it like it actually something depends on my list. I don't know what. Maybe my reputation. Not like that's much. But anyway, yes, this is just my opinion. I would love to know what your top 10, top 20 favorite writers, top 25 favorite comic book writers of all time are, and why, and what you would recommend. Like, one book is what. That's what I'm going to do too, is recommend one book from these particular writers as to what I think their magnum opus is, right? So let's go ahead and get started. This list was difficult. Number 10, Gail Simone. Now, Gail was a writer to me that came out of nowhere. I remember she wrote some issues of Deadpool, and they were mainly the reason I got them, because I had stopped reading Deadpool by then, was because of the art by Udon, like Alvin Lee and Arnold Sang. But I thought that she wrote the character pretty damn witty. It reminded me of the Joe Kelly stuff. And then eventually that title became Agent X, and she ended up leaving Marvel for DC. And I really didn't follow her work until she landed on this comic book called Birds of Prey. And man, that was it. She followed Chuck Dixon, and I love Chuck Dixon's run on Birds of Prey. But I thought her run, by adding the Huntress in there and adding all these little sub-characters to make the family bigger and bigger, oh man, she nailed it. Of course, then she went on to write Secret Six, Villains United. She wrote this freaking awesome run on Red Sonja. So, but if I had to suggest one book of hers, it would have to be Secret Six, for sure. I think Secret Six shows what these underdog characters are capable of doing, and in ways sometimes, outshine some of the Ostrander Suicide Squad stuff, which is what he originally started. It's the same concept, right? You have this C-list villains that are out on suicide missions to try to pay it forward to the government, or get their way out. So it's very similar, but if you've not read her Secret Six run, it is freaking phenomenal. Number 9, Ed Brubaker. You saw Greg Rucka's name on the list last time. It's almost like his counterpart, even though they've only really worked on one book. So, of course, I added Ed Brubaker. And I'm talking everything Sleeper, his run on Captain America, Velvet, the Criminal, Incognito, Fade Out. The guy, like, Scene of the Crime, like, it's not fair that a writer is this good and knocks it out of the park, right? And like I mentioned before, when I talked about it, my favorite writers in the first list, these writers don't always hit it out of the park, right? Sometimes they're not so good books that they put out. Like, I wasn't the biggest fan of his X-Men run, particularly the X-Men Daily Genesis, but that's not much his fault. I'm sure editorial had something to do with that. But seriously, this man, it feels like he could do no wrong. But the book that I will mention that I think kind of sums up everything that he's done, if you want to become an Ed Brubaker fan, or see what people find in his writing, and that is Kill or Be Killed. It's a series over at Image that started, I think, in 2017. We got a deluxe hardcover late last year, and I've been told it's out of print. I can't believe it went out of print. I'm sure it will be back into print, because it deserves it. I know we're going to get the Criminal oversized hardcovers back into print eventually. I believe sometime this year, the deluxe editions, because those were originally published by Icon, which was a part of Marvel Comics. But hopefully we will get Kill or Be Killed reprinted. It's a great book. I've talked about it in my top 10 favorite Image comics. If you want to see what the artwork looks like, go check that out. Number 8, Mark Waid. Remember when I said there's 5 people that could write comic books with all the knowledge? And if oh man, history of the DC universe, history, the recent history of the Marvel universe, the man can write. The man knows these characters and has love for them. And it's difficult to point out which of his works I think is the best, because normally I would say things like, oh, I think his Fantastic Four is pure genius, and of course today being Mike Wieringo's birthday, I should have gone with that. But really, to me, the book that stands out for him, he has written a lot. He's written X-Men, he's written Captain America, phenomenal run. He's written The Kingdom, which is like a hidden gem, which I need to bring up on my Empire, not The Kingdom. What the hell am I talking about? No, he did write The Kingdom. It was without Alex Ross. Empire's the other book that's a hidden gem. But anyway, the book that I'm going to mention today... Oh, Irredeemable, of course. The book that I want to mention today that he did, that I think encompasses everything about his writing that I love. You have this beautiful mix of fanboy meets a damn good writer, and that is Kingdom Come. To me, Kingdom Come is perfection, and deserves to be on everybody's shelf, whether you get the the absolute edition, or the trade paperback. It deserves a spot in your library. Number 7, Alan Moore. How could I not put him in my top 10 list? And I know some of y'all are like, how could you not put him in your top 1 list? I know, but this is just my list, right? These writers have to mean something to me, and this was very difficult. But Alan Moore is a writer that he's kind of become controversial lately, mainly because of the way of his stance against comic books and what they've done to him. And it's kind of sad, because I would take old Alan Moore, the way that he wrote Watchmen, V for Vendetta, even V for Vendetta, which isn't one of my favorites, Tom Strong, his Supreme run, which freaking awesome, Prometheus, not Prometheus, but League, man, I love League. But of course, the one book I have to talk about to make everybody understand the genius that is Alan Moore has to be Swamp Thing. Like, I love Watchmen. I love all these other books that he's written. But Swamp Thing, to me, was just perfection. Like, to me, it got me reading, and, as a young kid, like, holy crap, I have no idea what the definition of a comic book is. But this guy gets it. This reads like a piece of literature. That's what I was thinking about when reading his Swamp Thing. Like, it made me think outside the box. The things that he was able to do with this character that was kind of basic and just make it into a big, new, complex storyline. Oh, man. You see few writers do that. You could say that even now, like, new Alan Moore, today's Alan Moore couldn't do things like that. And that kind of sucks. Number 6, Peter David. How could I not put Peter David on this list? That man has written some of the most powerful moments in comic books. The death of Jean DeWolf. So he's written, and much like Kurt Busiek, Mark Waid, and Fabian Nicieza, he's written just about every character over at the Big Two. He also had his own series, Fallen Angel, which kind of spun out of Supergirl, and his Supergirl is probably the best Supergirl run that I've read. He's had Aquaman, Young Justice, X Factor Investigations, and that's the one I'm gonna go with. By the way, if you've never read the Last Avengers story, that's another classic. But X Factor Investigations, so it was when he came back to X Factor, so this is known as X Factor Volume 3. Volume 2 was a little mini-series. X Factor Investigations that kicked off with the Madrox mini-series is just a beautiful, freaking detective story. It's kind of noirish, and it's set in the back alleys of Mutant Alley, actually. So it was back before House of M. And then even with the crossovers, he was still able to tell this story of Layla Miller, Madrox, Siren, Strong Guy, M. Just these wonderful characters that everybody at the time in X-Men editorial and the writers themselves had kind of forgotten about. So he was like, sure, I'll take them. Of course, he wanted to use Havoc and Polaris, but they were being used at the time. But he's able to make them shine in his own Peter David unique way, giving them that witty dialogue that we love so much, and the damn dude can write a good story too. Now, before I get to my top 5 and the honorable mentions, I just want to remind you all to please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. We put out videos every day. We can be found on Redbubble as well as Patreon. All of that is in the description down below, how you can join and support the channel. Great way to do it if you can do so, and thank you to our existing patrons. Now, let's do it. Top 5, here we go. Brian K. Vaughan. Love this guy. Love Brian K. Vaughan's writing. To me, I don't think I've read a single series by him or a single comic book by him that has, let me down. Even his run on Ultimate X-Men, which wasn't the greatest, was still pretty damn fun. He had a run on Batman, he did Swamp Thing, and I'm not the biggest fan of Ex Machina. I know a lot of people really like it, but even that was so much more enjoyable than most of the comics I read that year whenever I read that book. I think it was 2016. Now, he has done a lot of things. Currently writing Saga. He did Pride of Baghdad. But the book that I'm going to talk about has to be Y the Last Man. I think Y the Last Man is perfection when it comes to his writing. That he's able to introduce a character, go through the hero's journey in this really weird apocalyptic future, possible future that's kind of an episode of The Outer Limits, right? Not Twilight Zone. But he's able to do that and give us a wonderful story, make you care about the characters, and of course, weep all the way up until the end. Oh, damn. Such a powerful freaking story. And if you haven't read it, there's an omnibus available. There's 5 hardcovers. There's small trade paperbacks. There's thick trade paperbacks. But you have to read it. Y the Last Man. Number 4. This one's cheating a little bit because this guy's a freaking master. This is Neil Gaiman. And it's so unfair to put him in this list. He's written novels, but is it though? Because when I think about when I read Sandman for the first time, and that was the first time I realized that comics could be so much more. There's so much more to this medium of comics. Yes, Alan Moore introduced me to the idea that comics are like novels. Cool. But Neil Gaiman made me realize, no, comics are better than novels. Comics is a medium that you can only do certain stories in. And that's what holds true to this day. Whether he was working on Sandman or whether he was doing the 1602 series at Marvel. He also did the Eternals, which was okay. And of course, countless of novels. Now they have TV shows, which is pretty interesting. I still haven't seen American Gods, and that's like my favorite novel that he's written. But the book, the story that I think best summarizes his work is the 3-issue miniseries called Death, the High Cost of Living. It's there were 2 Death miniseries. These are both included in the Death Absolute. It's part of Sandman Omnibus Volume 3. And it's beautiful. It's just the story of Dream's little sister and kind of like a whole little day in her life of how she meets people, how she becomes friends with them, and eventually some of them have to join her in the afterlife. Oh, it's beautiful. It's wonderful. I fell in love with her when she first appeared, but that story really sealed the deal for me. I thought that Neil Gaiman could do no wrong. That miniseries was wonderful. And I want to say it was written right towards the end of his Sandman days, like towards the end of his Sandman run. So if you have not read any of Neil Gaiman's work, try to find a copy. They are also available in little trade paperbacks, but Death, the High Cost of Living. Like I said, there's a follow-up series called Death, the Time of Your Life, but I think Death, the High Cost of Living with Chris Bachalo, freaking perfection. So, kicking off the top 3, Grant Morrison. He had to be on this list. He's one of my top favorite writers. And it's funny because he started off as like number 8, but the more I thought about it, I was like, no, he wrote this, and this book meant so much to me here. And this is the book that I was like, this is really good. This is more than like anything I've read this year. So Grant Morrison, he's the guy that gave us JLA. He had a stint on New X-Men. He's done a bunch of stories for DC and Marvel. But how do you summarize a man's work? And I'm going to go back to my top 10 favorite Vertigo titles. Animal Man. Animal Man was a character that was almost a joke character in DC during the time. I mean, Buddy's a great character, but Grant Morrison was able to use that. Grant Morrison was able to use your understanding of who Buddy was supposed to be and make him kind of a jokey character towards the beginning, even in his dialogue. But as soon as you start reading that, you see the changes in tone in the dialogue and the story and how dark it gets and how real to life it gets and how we have all these wonderful little moments that encompass a story like a lifetime. Oh man, I can't say enough of that run without giving anything away. And I realize, yes, I mean, there's other runs that he's done. He's done Doom Patrol, that just as good, but I think for me, my gut feeling to like always goes back to Animal Man. Number 2, Geoff Johns. Here's a guy to me that has done nothing wrong. Like, I love everything that he has written. So recently on a live video, someone asked me, how would I rank the Geoff Johns comics? You know, what's my least favorite to best? And I find that question so hard to answer because even like his Ultimate X-Men, the one-off issue that he did, was pretty damn funny. So I guess really quickly, and we'll talk about what my top one is. If I had to rank them, I would put Doomsday Clock at the bottom because Doomsday Clock isn't finished yet, and I need to finish it. Or no, it's finally finished. I haven't finished it yet. Right above that is Stars and Stripes. Above that would be Hawkman. Above that would be his Avengers run. Above that would be his Aquaman. Above that, Flash. Then we have his Infinite Crisis, and Infinite Crisis and Superman probably tied. Then above that is his Green Lantern. And top tier, gets no better than this, is JSA. And that's the book I'm going to recommend. It gets no better than Justice Society of America. His run on that, and I realized that it started off with David Goyer and James Robinson, but by the time, I mean, literally, Geoff Johns was writing it by himself as of like issue, what was it, 40 or something like that, and then he took on the whole, like a teen book, to write a teen book with all these different characters in it and make you care, make someone like me that had no interest in any of these Golden Age characters. I didn't know that any of these Justice Society's characters were. I know Hawkman was like a big headache to me back in the 80s trying to figure out what his real origin is. And Geoff Johns just made me care about each one of them with beautiful little moments that make up that comic book. If you haven't read it, they're coming out with thick trade paperbacks. I know there's Omnis, and I know it's not for everybody. There are 3 of those. But I think volumes 2 and then now 3 are out of print. But at least try to check them out in trade paperback format. Now, before I talk about my number 1 pick, and I'm pretty sure you all can guess who that is if you've been watching the channel for a while or have been paying attention to me, I have to talk about some honorable mentions. And I'll also talk about who number 25 through 21 were. So as far as honorable mentions, we have Tom Taylor, Stan Lee. How could I not add Stan Lee on this list? I know some of you all had him as your top 10 favorite writers of all time. But I think to me, this list has to mean something. The people on this list have to mean something to me. And so that's why this was hard. We have Ann Nocenti, Jonathan Hickman, Jason Aaron, Dwayne McDuffie, Peter Tomasi, just to name a few. Now, number 25 would have been James Robinson. Number 24 would have been Roy Thomas. Number 23 would have been Marv Wolfman. 22 would have been Chuck Dixon. This was hard. I love his Birds of Prey. I love his Birds of Prey. Nightwing, that's like one of my favorite go-to DC series. And number 21, Garth Ennis. Number 21 would have been Garth Ennis. And Garth Ennis, man, his Hellblazer, his Preacher. Oh, they mean so much to me. But this list was hard for me. So, number 1, I'm sure you all know, Chris Claremont. Now, I'm sure, you know, when I say Chris Claremont, you're like, but Omar, what about his Extreme X-Men? What about his new Excalibur? What about his Sovereign 7? What about his issues of Wildcats? He gets a pass. You know why? Because Chris Claremont was my childhood. Because Chris Claremont got me through rough days at school when I didn't think I had any friends. I knew I could always go home, open up an issue of Uncanny X-Men, and voila, there was my second family. There was my escape from a crappy reality. And whether it was the mutants going through the mutant massacre or going through Follow the Mutants or where they were in the Outback years, whatever it was my escape from reality. And Chris Claremont, to me, wrote the best book ever. Not the best comic, the best book ever in those 17 years that he initially wrote X-Men. It gets no better than that. To me, right? This is just my personal opinion. But that was my childhood growing up. That's a lot of who I am today are thanks to his characters and portrayal of some of these characters, you know. So that's it. To me, it doesn't get better than that, and nothing can ever replace that. No matter what else, like that's why I say that man gets a pass for anything that I don't agree that is good, but his Uncanny X-Men run, his X-Men, man, that's some of the best comics out there. Now, if I were to mention what one book I would choose from his to show everybody, it's the one that I always tell everybody to read. If they want to get into X-Men, it's God Loves, Man Kills. That to me is the epitome of what X-Men can be. That to me shows the true nature of these characters, whether it's Magneto, Wolverine, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Kitty Pryde, Storm. It doesn't matter who the characters are. Everything is done in that graphic novel. And we're getting a director's cut of that later on this year. So, of course, God Loves, Man Kills. Now, if you're wondering where you can pick up some of these writers' books and works, check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off the cover price. Cheap Graphic Novels prides itself on packaging your books so they arrive safely and in excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. And check out their bargain bin for even greater deals up to 90% off cover price. And for you minties, Cheap Graphic Novels is running a special promotion. If you're a first-time customer, let them know you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you'll receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. Now, this is only for U.S. customers. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discounts, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was it. This was part 2 of a 2-part video series. I hope you went back to watch part 1 if you haven't yet, or let me know in those comments down below how ridiculous my list is, whether you agree with some of them, whether you disagree completely. I would love to know what your list is. Everybody's opinion is different. Everything is all subjective. It doesn't matter, right? Like, what matters is what these writers mean to you all, and that's why this list was so hard for me. I had to think about what these writers meant to me. Please don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button, ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. Speaking of live, the amazing Amanda and I are going to come back tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to do a What's It Really That Good? It's kind of a take on our What's It Really That Bad series. We're going to be talking about Thor Ragnarok, so if you want to join us for a live episode, that's here tonight on the channel, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much for watching. Please, everybody, remember, stay healthy, stay safe out there, and much love to all of you.